Hello dear students, welcome back to our SS slot. In the previous week we had completed the first chapter of geography. Now today we'll be beginning with the first chapter of civics, that is the Indian Constitution. Of course, before I start, I would like to request in today's video that please share your views about how the explanation is going on via WhatsApp messages so that it becomes easier for me to improvise my techniques if required. And of course, that is at the end going to be beneficial to you all. So now let's begin with the chapter. In this chapter you'll be learning about three things: the need of constitution, the key features of the constitution, and what basically a constitution is. Here on the screen you can see a basic definition of the constitution given, and it says a constitution is a list of principles that the people of a country agree upon as the basis of how they want to be governed. Of course, it might sound a bit difficult to you right now, but with some examples and some given directions in the chapter, we'll be understanding this and we'll crack this out and make it to be very easy for you to understand. To begin with all this, we need to first understand what a constitution is, of course. For that, let me give you an example. For example, you're playing any game. For example, let us take the example that is given in your textbook, and that is about football. For example, you're playing a game football. Of course, you are aware that there are certain rules and regulations in that particular game. If you are not playing according to the rules and regulations, or you are not following the rules and regulations, of course you'll be penalized or you'll be thrown out of the game. With this basic example, it becomes very easier to understand that even if a person wants to play a game, he has to follow certain rules and regulations. Now, it was just a game. Have you ever thought about a whole country with around 130 crore of population? Okay. Of course, it is not possible to run such countries without a constitution. It means without any rules and regulations. By the example, it is very clear that to play a game also we require certain rules and regulations. So now it becomes obvious that to run a country also we will require some rules and regulations. When these rules and regulations are in a written form, they come to be known as a constitution. So, to conclude and to make the definition on your screen easier, I can say that a written document in which we find rules or regulations is called a constitution. Now from this you will of course want to know that how the constitution was written, why do we need it. Okay, so that is what we'll be learning in the chapter, plus we'll also see some key features of the Indian Constitution. Let us start reading. Why does a country need a constitution? This is the first topic given in your textbook. Today most countries in the world have constitution. While democratic countries are likely to have a constitution, it is not necessary that all countries that have a constitution are democratic. First point, what I have underlined over here, what is important is, it is very important to understand that constitution is a set of written rules and regulations for a country to be governed, for a country to be run like that. Okay, now every democratic country is definitely going to have a constitution. Okay, but it is not necessary that every country having a constitution is democratic. For example, there was a constitution in Nepal also, but Nepal was not a democratic country. Okay, but India is a democratic country, and so it is very obvious that we are going to have a constitution. The constitution serves several purposes. Now the constitution, I'll make this very clear in the beginning, constitution has three main purposes that we'll be understanding. First is, it lays out certain ideals that form the basis of the kind of country that we as citizens aspire to live in. A country, or put another way, a constitution tells us what usually um, tells us what the fundamental nature of our country is. Basically, the first thing that constitution does is it gives an idea of the fundamental nature of our country. It gives an idea of what kind of country do the people of the country want to live in. Either they want to live in a monarchy that where a king is ruling, or they want to live in a democratic country where they have the power to vote and select their leader. What kind of country they want to live in, that is the first purpose of constitution. A country is usually made up of different communities of people who share certain beliefs but may not necessarily agree on all the issues. Okay, now the next problem over here is, basically, why do we need a constitution? In a country, there are many religions, you will see many castes, you will see many, there are two genders over here, there are varieties. Okay, now everybody is definitely not going to have the same perception about a particular thing. So, how to avoid fights? To avoid fights, constitution has been made. A constitution, now what does constitution do over here to avoid fight is, a constitution helps us set as a set of rules and principles that all person in a society can agree upon on the basis of the way in which they want the country to be governed. This includes not only the type of government but also an agreement on certain ideals that they believe the country should uphold. Now, after I have said that to avoid such fights, we need a constitution. Constitution's work over here is to build up certain types of rules and regulations, keeping in mind the desires and hopes of each and every person, each and every gender, each and every community, so that nobody's feelings can be hurt. That is the work of constitution. Now, constitution helps us make such rules and regulations by which, or to which, everybody can agree upon, and thus they cannot get into any type of fights. To understand this in a much better way, we'll take example of Nepal. Nepal shares borders with us. Nepal was earlier a monarchy. They also had a constitution where the powers were with the king, with the ruler. Gradually, people did not like this way of government. They started protesting. After a long protest, after a long fight, like we were fighting against the Britishers, after a long fight, Nepal also gained democracy. After Nepal gained democracy, a new constitution was written, and in a new constitution, it was very clearly mentioned that the loopholes that were there in the previous constitution were not going to be again available in the second constitution. So, with this example, we can understand that when you make a constitution, you keep in your mind certain things which you will never expect from your country. Keeping in mind all such things about all the communities, gender, religions, a constitution is made. When a constitution is made, every aspect is analyzed. After analyzing all the aspects, a constitution is finally made. When the constitution is agreed upon by everybody, the country starts following it. Once the country starts following it, people are never against it, because they know that at the end it is the constitution that is going to save them. It is their right, their to with them. Okay, this was the example that I have given you about Nepal. Let us just read the highlighted points. um, Two contrasting situations of Nepal has been given here. Until recently, Nepal was a monarchy. Previous constitution of Nepal had been adopted in 1990, reflected that the final authority rested with the king. A people's movement fought to establish democracy in 2006. People had to write a new constitution to establish Nepal. The previous constitution did not reflect the ideals of the country that they want Nepal to be. Okay, so this was the example of Nepal. As in the game of football, in which a change of constitutive rules will change the game altogether, Nepal, by moving from a monarchy to a democratic government, needs to change all its constitutive rules in order to usher in a new society. This is why people of Nepal adopted a new constitution for the country in the year 2015. Alright, so of course, as we all know that there were definitely some problems, some loopholes in the previous constitution, because of which the monarchy came into existence for the second time. So the people, after gaining democracy for the second time, they decided that they will be making a new constitution where everybody's point of view will be considered and all the loopholes will be considered and changed. So this was the first purpose of a constitution. Let me repeat this. What was the first purpose of the constitution? The first purpose of the constitution is that it tells us what type of fundamental nature of our country is, or what type of country do we want to live in. Okay. Second, the second purpose of a constitution is to define the nature of a country's political system. For example, Nepal's earlier constitution stated that the country was to be ruled by the king and his council of ministers. In countries that have adopted a democratic form of government or polity, the constitution plays a crucial role in laying out certain important guidelines that govern decision making with these societies. So, in a democracy, we choose our leaders so that they can exercise power responsibly on our behalf. Now, see, the second purpose says that second purpose is to define the nature of a country's political system. The constitution lays down important guidelines. ठीक है, the constitution is laying down important guidelines. मतलब in our constitution we have some important points, important guidelines according to which the leader is supposed to act. Alright, this is for our benefit only, and this is the second purpose of constitution. It will always have certain guidelines or techniques, you can say, or you can say points in which a government or in which the leader has to work. If the leader is not working on the basis of those guidelines, he can be taken out also. However, there is the possibility that these leaders might misuse their authority. Constitution usually provides safeguard against this. Second thing that the constitution does under this second category is that there are chances that the leader, he starts feeling something great about himself. He starts having that king feeling, and maybe he can start misusing his power. So the constitution has certain guidelines for that also. The constitution always provides us safeguards against this. We can always fight against our leaders also if they are not going according to the constitution. In democratic societies, the constitution often lays down rules that guard against the misuse of authority by our political leaders. In case of Indian constitution, about which you will read more in the chapter. The right to equality is one of the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. When I talk about our Indian Constitution, the right to equality is one of the major rights that we have been provided in our Indian Constitution. Now, on this right to equality, we'll be reading in many more chapters and we'll be understanding what is right to equality to us, which has been there in the Indian Constitution, which has been specially made for we, the citizens of the country. Moving forward, the third important function. The third important function that a constitution plays in a democracy is to ensure that a dominant group does not use its power against the lesser dominant groups. Of course, in our class also we will be seeing that there are some groups which has more number of students or bright students or the ones who are dominant to the other ones who are maybe shy, quiet or lesser number in a group. If I suppose am the constitution of your class, of course I am never going to let that happen in your class. Okay, so the constitution's work is also to see that the majority groups are not misusing their powers on the minority groups. Such unhealthy situations can occur in democratic societies also, where the majority can continuously enforce decisions that exclude minorities and go against their interest, as the above storyboard illustrates. The constitution usually contains rules that ensures that minorities are not excluded for anything. Now the constitution will also see that the minorities are also not deprived of any facility or any advantage or any right. The constitution will constantly make sure that every minority or small group or whatsoever smaller people are always getting all their rights. Another reason why we have a constitution is precisely to prevent this tyranny or domination by the majority of a minority. This can refer to as inter-community domination. Now, in a country where we have various communities, there are some communities that are majority in number, and then there are some communities that are minority in number. It also sees that these majority communities are not overpowering the minority communities. Best example of this is the reservations that we have been provided by the government for the SC, ST and OBCs. We'll understand that in the next chapters. Now, the third purpose is to save us from ourselves. This might sound weird, but I'll give you an example from your text only. For example, you have a test tomorrow in the class. You also have, currently you are not being able to decide that whether you want to study or you want to watch your favorite TV show. Okay, your parents are already watching that TV show and you are also having the urge to stop studying, close the books and go and watch the TV show. But if you do so, you are definitely not going to get time to revise for your test tomorrow. In this situation, you might not realize that unintentionally you are taking decision that is wrong for you. So a constitution will always save you from yourself. It means it will always save you from taking wrong decisions. If I try to give a higher end of example, I can say that, for example, I am working at a place, I am not being paid, I feel cheated. What is going to come to my mind as a human being? Of course, I want to do bad to them, or I want to just go berate them. That is not right. In our constitution, it is clearly mentioned that if you are cheated, you always have the court. So, instead of taking wrong decisions, I will remember my constitution has provided me with some rights and I will act accordingly and save myself from going wrong or taking wrong decisions which may be harmful to me in the future period of time. Similarly, the constitution helps to protect us against certain decisions that we might take wrong. Okay, so I'm not reading all this. We have already explained. A good constitution does not allow such whims to change its basic structure. From the above discussion, you will understand that the constitution plays a very important role in democratic society. Today, we have seen that what a constitution is. It is a basic written document which has certain rules and regulations to how to run a country. Okay, second thing is, all the democratic country are definitely going to have a constitution, but the non-democratic countries can also have a constitution like Nepal had. Okay, then we saw the example of Nepal and we understood that why a constitution is required, or I can say that why a correct type of constitution is required. We saw three purposes of the constitution. The first is, the constitution tells us the fundamental nature of our country in which we want to live in. It gives us certain rules and regulations that everyone agrees upon to run a country. Agreement on ideals they want the country to have. Second purpose, it defines the nature of a country's political system. Constitution lays down important guidelines that govern decision making, provides us safeguards against leaders misusing their powers. We have been given a right to equality. Next, sees that dominant people are not misusing their powers against the non-dominant or the minority ones. It contains rules to ensure that minorities are not excluded or deprived from any benefits or rights. It also prevents inter-community domination. Third purpose is to save us from ourselves. It does not allow us to change the basic structure of the country. Here are the purposes of the constitution given on your screen. Tells us the fundamental nature of a country, reflects the ideals of the country, explains the nature of the political system, ensures the misuse of authority by our political leaders, guarantees the right to equality, ensures that no one can be discriminated, saves us from ourselves, ensures majority does not influence minority. So students, with this we are done with the first part of the chapter